There's a difference between a man who enjoys having you in his life and a man who has started imagining his life with you in it. And that difference is rarely found in his words. It is found in what he consistently does. Because when a man truly sees a woman as part of his future, something changes inside him. His attention becomes more intentional. His decisions begin to include her. His actions start speaking about tomorrow, not just today. He may not always say, "I want you to be my future." He may not make dramatic promises. He may not constantly talk about marriage, commitment, or forever. But watch what he does. Watch how he treats your presence. Watch how he handles conflict. Watch whether he makes space for you in the life he is building. A man who only wants temporary comfort will usually focus on what feels good in the moment. But a man who sees a future with you begins thinking differently. He starts asking himself, can we build something together? Can I trust her? Can she trust me? Can we grow together? Can I become the kind of man worthy of this relationship? And this is where many people become confused. They listen to beautiful words and ignore inconsistent behavior. They become attached to potential instead of paying attention to patterns. But love is not simply what someone says when emotions are high. Love becomes much clearer through what someone repeatedly chooses when nobody is watching. So don't rush to judge his feelings by one romantic message, one perfect date, or one emotional conversation. Instead, look deeper. There are certain behaviors that reveal when a man has stopped seeing you as simply someone he enjoys and has started seeing you as someone he could build a life with. And when you recognize these signs, you stop chasing reassurance. You stop analyzing every text. You stop wondering where you stand. Because sometimes the clearest answer isn't hidden in his words. It is already visible in his actions. And today we're going to uncover 4 powerful things a man tends to do when he genuinely sees you as part of his future. When a man truly begins to see you as part of his future, something changes in the way he makes decisions. He no longer thinks only about what feels good today. He starts thinking about what will still matter tomorrow. His choices become more intentional because your presence has become part of the life he is imagining. This does not mean that he suddenly asks for permission for every decision or loses his independence. It means that he begins to understand that a serious relationship is not 2 people living completely separate lives. It is 2 people whose choices can either strengthen or weaken what they are building together. You can often recognize this shift in the smallest things. He may begin talking about plans months or even years ahead and naturally include you in those conversations. He may discuss where he wants to live, what kind of career he wants, what he wants his family life to look like, or what kind of lifestyle he hopes to create. And notice the important difference. He isn't simply making promises to impress you. He is allowing you to see the direction in which his life is moving. A man who sees you as his future begins asking himself different questions. Will this decision help me become more stable? Will this career move create a better life? How will this affect the person I love? What kind of man do I need to become? These questions reveal maturity because his focus is no longer limited to temporary pleasure. This is also why you should pay attention to his actions more than his romantic words. Anyone can say, "I want you forever." Anyone can make emotional promises when everything feels perfect. But the deeper question is whether his daily decisions support those words. Does he manage his responsibilities? Does he work towards stability? Does he respect your time? Does he consider your feelings when making important choices? Does he communicate when something affects both of you? When a man is serious, you may notice that he becomes more transparent about his plans. He doesn't want you constantly guessing where he's going or what he wants from life. He begins giving you a clear understanding of his direction because he knows that a future cannot be built on confusion. But there is another important lesson here. Don't confuse inclusion with control. A healthy man doesn't surrender his identity just because he loves someone. He doesn't need to consult you about every tiny decision. Instead, he learns the difference between independence and partnership. He can stand on his own feet while still understanding that some decisions deserve consideration because another person's heart and future are involved. This is where real commitment becomes visible. Love is not simply saying, I want you. Love is asking, what kind of life can we build if we both become better? And when a man starts thinking like that, his relationship with you becomes less about temporary emotion and more about shared direction. He starts building instead of merely experiencing. He starts preparing instead of simply promising. His eyes move beyond the excitement of today and toward the responsibility of tomorrow. Because when someone truly sees you in their future, they don't just make room for you in their schedule. They begin making room for you in their decisions, their priorities, and the life they are consciously choosing to create. A man can be deeply attracted to you and still not be ready to build a future with you. Attraction creates excitement, but commitment reveals itself through consistency. When a man truly sees you as someone he wants in his future, he begins to understand that love cannot survive on intense moments alone. There will be ordinary days, difficult conversations, misunderstandings, stress, responsibilities, and moments when emotions are not at their highest. What matters then is whether he still chooses to show up. Consistency is one of the clearest signs of serious intention because it requires discipline. Anyone can be attentive when they are excited about someone. Anyone can send beautiful messages late at night, plan impressive dates, or make promises when everything feels romantic. But consistency asks a different question. What happens when the excitement becomes normal? A man who sees potential in a long-term relationship doesn't disappear whenever things become inconvenient. He doesn't make you constantly wonder whether he cares. His communication may not always be perfect, and he may have responsibilities that keep him busy, but there is a recognizable pattern in his behavior. He makes an effort. He follows through. When he says he will call, he tries to call. When he makes a commitment, he takes it seriously. When there is a problem, he doesn't automatically run away. This does not mean that a serious man will never make mistakes. He will. He may forget something, misunderstand you, become frustrated, or handle a situation poorly. The difference is what happens afterward. Does he take responsibility? Does he learn? Does he try to repair what was damaged? Does he become more conscious of how his actions affect you? That is where maturity begins. A future is not built by perfect people. It is built by people who are willing to become more responsible for the way they love. You should also understand that consistency doesn't mean constant attention. A healthy man can have work, friends, family, personal goals, and time for himself. He doesn't have to be available every minute to prove that he cares. In fact, someone who is building a meaningful life should have responsibilities beyond the relationship. What matters is whether he creates a dependable place for you within that life. There is peace in consistency. You don't have to decode every message. You don't have to wonder whether yesterday's affection will become today's distance. You don't have to chase someone for basic reassurance. His behavior gives you enough clarity to understand where you stand. And this is an important lesson. Never measure commitment only by intensity. Sometimes the person who makes the biggest promises is not the person who can offer the strongest relationship. Real commitment can look surprisingly ordinary. It looks like keeping your word. It looks like checking in. It looks like respecting boundaries. It looks like being present during difficult conversations. It looks like choosing honesty when lying would be easier. A man who sees you as his future doesn't need to constantly convince you with dramatic declarations. Over time, his pattern begins to speak for him. His consistency says, "You can trust my presence." His actions say, "I am not here only when it is convenient." And his patience says, "I understand that something valuable takes time to build." Because love that is meant to last does not depend on how strongly someone feels for you on their best day. It depends on how consistently they treat you across many ordinary days. Anyone can create a beautiful moment. A mature man tries to create a reliable life. When a man truly sees you as part of his future, he eventually realizes that loving someone also means becoming a better version of himself. He understands that a relationship cannot grow if he remains trapped in the same habits, the same emotional reactions, and the same weaknesses that have held him back. He doesn't expect you to fix him, save him, or carry the weight of his unresolved problems. Instead, he begins looking honestly at himself and asking a difficult question. What do I need to change within myself if I want to build something meaningful? This is where real maturity begins. A man may tell you that he loves you, but his willingness to work on himself reveals how seriously he takes that love. If he knows that he has a problem with anger, he works on controlling it. If he struggles with communication, he learns to communicate better. If he is irresponsible with money, he begins developing discipline. If he has unhealthy habits, he starts confronting them. Not because you demanded perfection from him, but because he understands that the future he wants requires a stronger version of himself. This doesn't mean he becomes perfect overnight. Growth is rarely dramatic. Sometimes it is almost invisible. It can be waking up earlier, keeping promises, controlling an impulsive reaction, apologizing when he is wrong, becoming more focused on his goals, or learning to walk away from distractions that once controlled him. The important thing is direction. A man who is serious about his future doesn't simply ask, "What can she give me?" He begins asking, "What can I bring into this relationship?" That question changes everything. Because when you stop expecting another person to complete you, you begin taking responsibility for your own life. You realize that love is not a substitute for discipline. A relationship cannot permanently compensate for a lack of purpose, emotional control, honesty, or responsibility. And this is why a man who genuinely sees you in his future may become more disciplined with his time. He may become more focused on his career. He may start taking his health more seriously. He may become selective about the people he surrounds himself with. He begins understanding that every habit is shaping the person he will eventually become. He knows that the future doesn't suddenly arrive one morning. It is created quietly through today's choices. If he spends every day chasing temporary pleasure, avoiding responsibility, and refusing to grow, then his words about a beautiful future mean very little. But if his actions show that he is developing patience, stability, self-control, and purpose, then you can see that something deeper is happening inside him. And you should never confuse this with changing yourself to earn someone's love. Healthy growth comes from personal responsibility, not fear. A man shouldn't become better because he is terrified that you will leave. He should become better because he respects the person he is becoming and understands the value of what he is building. There is also something powerful about a man who can admit, "I was wrong." Ego tells a person to defend every mistake. Maturity teaches him to learn from it. If he can listen without immediately becoming defensive, apologize without making excuses, and change his behavior instead of repeating the same mistake, that tells you far more than 1,000 romantic statements. Because the strongest sign of future-minded love isn't perfection. It is progress. It is the willingness to look in the mirror and say, "I have more work to do, and I am willing to do it." When a man begins improving himself without being constantly pushed, reminded, or controlled, he is no longer simply talking about the future. He is preparing himself for it. When a man truly sees you as part of his future, he begins to understand that protecting a relationship is not about controlling another person. It is about protecting the trust, respect, peace, and commitment that both people have worked to build. He starts becoming more conscious of what he allows into his life because he knows that not every opportunity deserves his attention and not every connection deserves access to his heart. This is where boundaries become important. A man who is serious about you understands that commitment is not simply saying, "I choose you." It is also being willing to say, I will not entertain what threatens what we are building. He may receive attention from other women. He may have opportunities to flirt, seek validation, or pursue temporary excitement. But his response to those opportunities tells you something about his character. A man who is genuinely committed doesn't need someone else to constantly remind him where his boundaries should be. He develops those boundaries because he already understands the value of what he has. That doesn't mean he becomes isolated from everyone else. Healthy relationships allow friendships, independence, social connections, and personal space. The difference is respect. He knows how to interact with others without creating unnecessary emotional confusion. He doesn't deliberately keep people around simply because he enjoys their attention. He doesn't hide conversations that he knows would damage trust. He doesn't create secret doors into his life while telling you that you're the only person he wants. His commitment becomes visible in what he refuses to entertain, and this principle extends far beyond romantic attention. He may also begin setting boundaries with unhealthy habits, toxic influences, unnecessary drama, and anything that repeatedly pulls him away from the person he wants to become. If certain friendships encourage destructive behavior, he may create distance. If certain environments constantly tempt him away from his goals, he may stop participating. If a habit is damaging his relationship or his personal growth, he becomes willing to confront it. Why? Because a man who sees a future with you understands that every choice has a consequence. He knows that trust can take years to build and only moments to destroy. He also understands that loyalty isn't merely about avoiding physical betrayal. Loyalty can be found in honesty, transparency, respect, and the willingness to protect someone's dignity even when they are not present. If he talks respectfully about you when you're not around, that matters. If he refuses to participate in conversations that disrespect your relationship, that matters. If he doesn't use your private weaknesses as entertainment for other people, that matters. If he can maintain boundaries even when nobody would know what happened, that matters even more. Because character is revealed most clearly when there is an opportunity to do something wrong without consequences. A man who sees you as his future begins thinking beyond immediate temptation. He asks himself, is this worth risking what I am building? And sometimes the strongest form of commitment is not a grand romantic gesture. It is a quiet decision nobody sees. He closes the unnecessary conversation. He refuses the tempting invitation. He walks away from the attention he doesn't need. He chooses honesty when deception would be easier. He protects the relationship even when you aren't there to see him doing it. But remember, healthy boundaries must go both ways. A man should not use protecting the relationship as an excuse to control your clothes, friendships, phone, career, or personal freedom. Real commitment creates security, not imprisonment. Real love allows two people to remain individuals while consciously choosing each other. When a man sees you as his future, he doesn't try to own you. He respects you. And because he respects you, he respects the relationship. He understands that something valuable must be protected, not because it is fragile, but because it is precious. That is why his commitment eventually becomes visible through his choices. He doesn't simply tell you that you're important. He behaves like the relationship is important. And when words and actions finally move in the same direction, you no longer have to chase certainty. You can see it. So, if you want to know whether a man truly sees you as part of his future, don't become obsessed with decoding every word he says. Look at the life he is building, the consistency he shows, the person he is becoming, and the things he is willing to protect. Because real intention leaves evidence. He includes you in meaningful decisions. He becomes consistent instead of simply romantic. He works on himself instead of expecting you to change. And he protects the relationship through boundaries, honesty, and commitment.
But remember something important. You should never have to beg someone to see your value.
The right relationship doesn't require you to constantly chase, convince, or prove that you are worthy of being chosen. Love should not leave you permanently confused about whether you matter. And if someone truly wants a future with you, you won't have to force every step forward. Their actions will gradually create clarity. So stop listening only to promises. Watch patterns, watch consistency, watch character. Watch what happens when there is temptation, disagreement, pressure, or distance. Because anyone can say, I want you forever. But only a person who is serious about you will begin preparing themselves for that forever. And perhaps that is the greatest lesson of all. Don't look for someone who simply wants you in their present. Look for someone whose actions show that they are capable of building a future with you. At the same time, become the kind of person who can build that future too. Don't chase love. Don't lose yourself trying to keep someone. Build your own strength, your own peace, your own purpose, and your own character. Then let the right person meet you there. Because when two people are growing instead of merely depending on each other, love becomes something deeper than attachment. It becomes a shared path. And if this message reached something inside you, remember this. The person who truly sees your future value will not only talk about tomorrow, they will make better choices today. Thank you for spending these moments with us. If you found value in this message, support the channel by liking this video, subscribing, and sharing it with someone who may need to hear these words. Until the next message, stay disciplined, protect your peace, master yourself, and never forget. Your future is being built by the choices you make today.